Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. How are you? Hi, everyone.
How many people saw Slay play? Good, a large number of you. Wonderful. You know, there are life-changing moments in the theater as an audience member, and Slay play is one of them. As actors, how life-changing was Slay play for each of you? It's a big question to start with.
I mean, I'll go, I guess. Go ahead. It was majorly life-changing. The show itself requires so much of both the audience and of the cast. And I think I learned that actually I'm a lot stronger. I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was because of the challenges of this. The challenges of this play kind of brought out this need, this strength in me, which I think I didn't realize I had before. So I feel totally changed by that. Yeah.
Beautiful. James, for you.
Yeah, I mean, this play has been a part of our lives now for almost 2 years. And we were just, Ato and I were strolling here saying that's still very much in our bodies. And what a gift as an artist, as an actor, as a storyteller to be so invested naturally because we're a part of it. But this play in particular, that our higher purpose and our duty and our mission was to tell this story 8 shows a week. So, I mean, similar to what Ato said, it's a matter of that it challenged my body, it challenged my soul, but it made me stronger as an artist. And yeah, this play was a dream come true because of my scene partner and all of the other actors that were involved in the entire team. It's rare that you have such a perfect combination and mixture and formula of a play on Broadway. It changed me forever.
Yeah, and I think it bears mentioning now that like James and I have, I don't know, we went to grad school together. We've been friends for like almost 8 years now, and we were very, very close in grad school. We did a lot of like duo acts together, and the fact
We did drag.
we did that. That's true. But the fact that we got to do this together was also something really, really magical. And we would say to each other often throughout the run, I cannot imagine doing this with anyone else. Yeah, there had been this history built that I think also fed the relationship that was on the stage. Yeah.
Who got cast first?
I got when the play was done up at the O'Neill, that's when I was first invited to be a part of a reading of it in the workshop, and then I got the offer for New York Theater Workshop from the reading, and then
I wasn't able to do the O'Neill.
Right.
And so I had to audition for the New York Theater Workshop production.
But I sent him the script earlier because I was
because he's a good friend.
I said, babe, there's been edits to your big monologue here, and so I sent him the PDF, and I gave him a little advantage. And I was like, you have to get this role.
That's what friends do. Right?
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
exactly what
friends
they do.
Yeah.
All right, so how did you each get involved with the play? Was your role written for you or in mind to Jeremy?
It was written in mind, and yes, and for me. I became friends with Jeremy the summer before he went to grad school, before he went to Yale, and we stayed friends. And I tell this story a lot, but I was literally driving Jeremy up to class in my car, and he was typing away in his laptop in the passenger seat because the part of the act 1 of the play was due to his teacher. And we're pulled over at a rest station, at a gas station, and he's like, can you read some of this? Tell me, does this make sense? And it was part of my monologue. And so to be at a gas station on 95, driving up to New Haven, Connecticut, to now, it's just, it's wild. So I started then, and then I saw the production at Yale, and we remained friends, and it's been the greatest gift. Yeah.
So take me back to your initial reaction the first time you read the play, and what made you say, I have to do this or be a part of this?
I also went up and saw the workshop up at Yale, Jeremy's second year.
Oh, so you were not in the workshop?
No.
Either.
No, we were different generations.
Yeah,
Jeremy,
we had graduated at that point.
Yeah.
But so I went up to see it, and having gone through that program, I was like, they're doing what on stage? Like they're doing that play. And I just thought to myself, like, had this been here when I was a student here, I, I think my entire experience would have been shifted. And at that point, I was like, I need to figure out a way to be a part of this production. So I kind of chased it down. Yeah.
So you read it in parts, James, right? So the first time you read it in its entirety, like what went through your mind? What were your reactions, your initial reactions?
First, I had never ever read anything like it.
Yeah.
I was so proud of my friend for his intelligence, his bravery, his artistry, his imagination. And, you know, it wasn't easy for Jeremy when he was doing this play up at Yale. He got a lot of backlash for it, and he talks about it publicly. And for him to have stayed true to his mission and his writing and what he wanted to talk about within this play, I mean, that's also something that I reacted to. I was his strength, his perseverance against people that wanted to censor him, and he didn't listen. And that's a beautiful thing, because now look where the play took itself. Yeah. So when I first read it, I wanted to be involved in any way that I possibly could.
Well, I'd love for you, the two of you, to talk about the roles that you played of Dustin and Gary and how they functioned in the play. Like, let's talk about, dissect those roles. They're so beautifully written.
Yeah. I think Jeremy did he says this thing where all of the characters are sort of just like parts of him, you know, and Jeremy and I also have a friendship, and so it was nice to like be able to translate at different points, sort of like, oh yeah, I can see him here, I can see him, you know, in different places in the play. But similarly to James, Gary was kind of molded around with me in mind, and so like. So I feel like I'm sorry, I'm getting like a little emotional about it right now.
Go ahead, yeah.
There were so many aspects of this character that were me. There were many that weren't, but the ones that were deeply personal and felt a little dangerous, and so that felt like another prod to like, yes, you sort of need to lean into this. But Gary and Dustin have like reached this impasse in their relationship where the power dynamic is proving to be unhealthy for them. And so they're coming to this therapy to sort of shift the power dynamic. And I think Gary starts at a place where he doesn't value himself in this relationship, and I think he has allowed himself to be devalued in this relationship, and that's what he's struggling with. He's struggling with, how do I take ownership of my power and of myself inside my blackness, you know?
And Dustin as his partner, they're trying to figure out this power dynamic, but a big problem of it is Dustin's inability to look at his own privilege, and he oftentimes in the play makes it about his own suffering and his own experience, where a lot of times he can't face the reality of his black partner right next to him. So the wrestling that he goes through within the play, but also the outside world of the play, is, you know, Jeremy, when he was writing this role, I just read something that, you know, he said about it, and in terms of his brown friends or people of mixed backgrounds that have the ability to walk into any space as a white passing person and have all the privileges that comes with. But there is a slight tilt of the head of like, where are you from? Who are you? And, you know, Jeremy wrote this with me in mind. I'm half Arab, and, you know, Dustin's struggle is that he can't see his own privilege walking into a room, that he has that ability to pass. His partner does not. And he's really trying to be there for him, and be there for his partner, but his own narcissism gets in the way.
Yeah. Beautifully put, both of you. Jeremy O. Harris is one of the greatest new voices writing for the American theater. What was it like living in his words and the world he created of slave play?
Madness. It was absolute madness. Legitimately, like toward the end of the run, I remember being backstage with Sullivan, who played Philip, and like we would have these moments where we'd be like, "What is this play? What are we doing? This is crazy." Yeah. You know what I mean? And there was no moment where we were like, "All right, this is normalized." It's just like a year and a half of a run.
Yeah.
Still. You know, and James and I were also talking earlier when we were headed here about how much, again, like you said, like it's still in the body. It's because so much of this play deals with trauma, and trauma lives in the body, right? And so as an actor, when you're touching that trauma, you maybe unwittingly put it in your body, you know what I mean? And like, I'm still doing things to sort of like release it from me. I remember the week after the show, I was like, Epsom salt baths with lavender bubble bath was like my thing. It was like, that's how I'm gonna get through this, you know? And I just remember a week after the show, I was like, all right, I'm taking my bath, I'm doing my, and I found myself speaking Gary's monologue. In like, I'm laying in a bath trying to relax, and like it's still coming out, you know? And I had to have this moment where I was like, Gary doesn't live here anymore. You know what I mean? Like, he's not here.
Thrash about in my sleep sometimes naturally, and I woke up and I was doing the choreography of sorts of like as if I'm like pushing my scene partner.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, it was crazy. It's like it's so layered that it's easy to lose yourself inside of it, you know, which is a great thing, but also like something that as an actor you really need to pay attention to. How do you care for yourself while you're doing this? You know,
and the subject matter in these characters, the veil is so thin.
Yeah.
So when you leave the play, you don't leave the play because you walk out on the street and you witness these power dynamics. You witness this every day. You experience it, microaggressions, all of it. And you know, there was so much wonderful conversation and press about the play, and energy of, you know, people that would see the play and would want to talk afterwards. And you know, sometimes that was really it was uplifting, but also that energy exchange is quite draining. So there's a lot of self-preservation that had to go into place, boundaries with friends, with loved ones, with the outside public of getting through this. And I've said this before, but you know, the first thing is that when you walk into work every day is reminding yourself that 800 people have not heard this story yet, and so this is for them. This night, this performance. And it doesn't matter if I'm tired. It doesn't matter if we've been doing this play now for 3 months. We got to pull up, you know? And I get to look into this one's eye. So it's like, okay, I'm energized. This will work. Yeah.
Was this probably the most intense piece of work you've done so far in your careers?
Hands down.
Yes,
I tend to do like really emotionally heavy stuff. Like I very rarely do I do a comedy, but as you like it, you know. But very rarely do I do something that feels like bubbly or up, and this is by far the hardest thing I have ever done. So, yeah.
Same.
James, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's something, you know, certain characters have certain discoveries or epiphanies or revelations within the play, but the play still sits in a place of questions and not complete answers. So that energy that exists at the Golden Theater every night around 10:10, 2 hours and 10 minutes, you kind of go home with it, and it stays in your body, and those questions are still percolating. And yeah, it's by far the hardest thing. My body's still recouping. Yeah.
You know, you started to talk about just, you know, when you live in this kind of world that Jeremy's put out there, then you step into the real world afterwards and you see that all these questions are still out there. You know, it must really like sit really like in your mind, like, wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like there is no escape, which I think was part of like the whole thrust of the production, like the sort of idea behind the production was like, that's the reason there was no intermission, that's the reason there was a mirror there. It's like, there's no way, you cannot leave this. It's in front of you. You're a part of it. And I think that when you're talking about race in America, that is a stance we have to take. You cannot leave this. Yeah. It must be faced. You know, which I really appreciate about this play.
Yeah, yeah. What makes Jeremy such a wonderful and brilliant playwright?
Well, so many things.
Go.
He deeply loves people.
Yeah.
He loves people and all their flaws and their eccentricities and the detail of language and their vulnerabilities. And he puts that in the text, and he provides that space in the room. But among so many other things, I mean, Jeremy also deeply cares about his actors. He deeply cares about the people that are telling the story every night. And so, you know, for him to have, he has, as much as he has his pen in his hand, he also has a wide open ear to hear your experience as a storyteller within this. From Robert O'Hara, our director, to any actor or any experience within the play, he wants it to be the best it possibly can be. And he wants to tell the truth.
Yeah, and on top of it all, like, he is fearless. Yeah. You know, he is bold, and he realizes that in order to affect change, he needs to continue to be bold and push, and he continues to do that. And he is about the things he says he's about, which is sort of, I think, what makes him such a singular voice. You know, it's a deep authenticity. You know.
Then there is your director, Robert O'Hara. Yeah. What specifically makes him one of the most sought-after directors, and how different was his rehearsal room from other rehearsal rooms you've been in? I've been fascinated about the process. I talked to Robert during the downtown when you were at New York Theater Workshop, and uptown. I would love to have been in the rehearsal room for this play. What was that like?
I like to refer to Robert as kind of like he's like a very emotionally distant father. You're just like, I know you love me. Yeah. I know there's love here, but like, he's not going to be effusive about sort of telling you that you're great, or like that never. Really worked, or about, there's none of that. And so as an actor, and I had been warned, so as an actor, you just like, how do I make myself self-sufficient in this rehearsal process? Which I think was really smart on Robert's part, because like, we needed to take such ownership of these roles and this process. So him kind of like laying back allowed us to really throw stuff. You know, we're like, he's not gonna give us this, that we have to like find this as a company, you know, which I think was really, really smart of him.
And he also allowed a lot of freedom. He would say, I need you to get to point A and then get to point B. And he didn't care how you got there. But if you didn't do it right and you didn't get to point A, then you'd know. But he would never come back with a compliment that you got to point A or B. No. He would just, if the moment moved on, the rehearsal moved on, then you know that you did it. And which,
so that's how you knew.
That's how you knew. Yeah.
Which to me is like 180 from any other rehearsal room I've ever been in. I think there's a desire for this sort of like, keep going, keep doing that thing, which I think works. But I now realize that this also works and is empowering in its own way. You know,
you find it as a company. Yeah. Because the one thing about it, for those of you who saw a Slay play, your performances that you gave are so truthful, so in the moment. And I don't know how you do what you do, but you're so masterful at what you do. And I'm sure it all started there, of you all trusting yourselves and trusting each other. And that's the power that Robert gave you in the rehearsal room. What was it like having Robert and Jeremy in the room together? Like, what were those, what kind of conversations did you have? Were you allowed to, like you said, Robert sort of said, get from A to B. But what kind of conversations did you have with Jeremy in the room during the rehearsal process? Or were there conversations?
In the beginning at New York Theater Workshop, there was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of detailed table work, but also conversations up in the space in the room. And I mean, they're a dynamic duo, and so they kind of riff off of each other. But you know, Robert sometimes needs his space, so Jeremy would disappear for a couple days and come back, and then come back and check in. And but between them, they're I mean, Robert is a hero of Jeremy's, and so there was a lot of trust already placed into Robert's hands.
And the work that they're interested in, Robert is also a writer, and the work that they make lives like in conversation, you know. I think Jeremy once used the term like it's like theatrical lineage or something. It just when you think about plays like Booty Candy, Robert's play Booty Candy, or when you think about plays like Barbecue, that are they have a lot of the same DNA as slave play in various moments in small ways. Like when you think about that shift in Barbecue, you know, like that's something that like lived in slave play as well. You know, you thought it was one thing, but you got something else. And so I feel like they're both interested in the same thing as artists. So they really were a dynamic duo. Yeah.
Then there's the ensemble. I mean, you are a perfect cast. I mean, like you said, you can see how you all got together from a very early point because you all had to take this journey and find this together. What was it like sharing the stage with this company 8 times a week?
I mean, the biggest honor. The other actors in this play, we were such a family.
Yeah.
And there was such a trust involved. Like we've been talking about, it was not easy to do every night, but the fact that I could come backstage and have a hug from any one of these people, we really lifted each other up.
Yeah.
And these other actors are tremendous, and there would be things that would happen on stage that they would a snafu or something that and we'd catch each other, and it happened, and we'd always catch each other. There's something that, you know, Atu and I came back from when we were in grad school, is that I will and we repeated this to each other, and the phrase is, I will hold you up, I will never let you fall. And that was the slave play cast.
Yeah. And I think like also in rehearsal process, like people like Sullivan, who were so like playful and always reinvesting and and kind of like finding new things, really encouraged, I think, the company as a whole to be in a place where we were always looking for like, can we go deeper? What can we find? Like, I feel like there were different strengths that everybody brought that allowed us all to sort of like elevate as a company. Like you have Annie, who's like a master comedian, like, and her timing is amazing, and she'll never do it the same twice, which reminds you that like you have the freedom to actually just like make this fresh for yourself every single time. You know, it was a great reminder for me. It was lots of great lessons were learned as well.
Yeah. Was there something specifically that, you know, there's always an unlocking of a character that really sets you down a path saying, I can take this journey. Was there something that unlocked each of these roles for you that you could tell our audience about? Was there something, a certain day in rehearsal or something, or even a preview, where something that happened and you were like, wow, I've got Dustin now, I've got Gary now, or I'm on the right path?
I don't know if I ever got the character down right, but that
they did, right?
But that sense of play and that inspiration that Atu was just talking about from the other actors, that really kept me motivated on my own toes every day. But there was a moment very early on, back at the O'Neill, when Jeremy was making rewrites, and for the first time, Robert, it's the big monologue in Act 2 when I jump out and my I'm not white monologue, and I'm bouncing around the stage. You know, Robert, for the first time in a long time, that I felt permission from a director that he said, you can allow yourself, I forget exactly what he said, but he said, you can allow yourself to be insane. You can allow yourself to take up space. You can allow yourself to lose yourself within the text. And just that moment that he allowed me to play and actually have fun, no matter the dialogue or the subject matter, I was granted permission to play. And to be seen. And, you know, I've had a short career so far, but it's to get to a place in a play where you feel profound permission and a sense of ownership. That's the greatest gift ever. And so it was early on that back at the O'Neill that Robert gave me that freedom, that I could use my full instrument, and I could use my insanity and all the dark parts about me. And he said, you need to bring that to light. And so that was a big moment for me.
Because that monologue is such a revelation for you in that show. So it's so interesting to hear that story of how you got there. Really brilliant for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there were two lines in this play that like were the center of this character. One of them was "Motherfucker, I am the prize,"
Yeah.
and the other one was "Nobody but my mama had ever told me I was a prize," because to me that says that that says something about where Gary lands, where he ends up, and it also says something about like what his deepest hurt actually is. I think both. There's this moment that they talk about that they talked about in acting class where there's like a symbiosis between like the writer and the actor, like what the writer was intending. And for me, Jeremy and I never talked about this, but I felt like Nobody But My Mama Had Ever Told Me I Was a Prize was a place that Jeremy and I like came into like alignment, because I know some of about the relationship he has with his mother, but my relationship with my mother is like deeply important to me. And so that when I felt like I was in alignment with Jeremy was like, I was like, I found the character. I found my way in, because I feel like I understand something about Jeremy that he didn't directly say to me, you know? Yeah, so it was those two lines.
Beautiful. The play is also very sexual. Talk about working with your intimacy director, who I adore, Claire Warden. What was that like? Because, you know, intimacy directors are all brand new to the theater now, and I know a lot of directors. There's a director in the house tonight who was saying to me before we started, saying, I teach acting now, and you know, just by touching someone on the shoulder now, you have to fill out 16 pages, or like, you know, or finding that safe space of working in a room between a director and an actor now. So, you know, Claire is that new voice in the room now. So talk about working with her and what that was like.
It was so incredibly important.
Yeah.
She, you know, Claire is there to help facilitate the story and do it safely. And so everyone has the freedom within to do their job to the best of their ability, with everyone feeling safe, respected, and having ownership over their own body. So she kind of provides this crystal architecture of, this is the placement of this sexual act, this is the placement of this moment of violence, and everyone knows that we go from this marker to this marker to this marker, and within, and there's constant dialogue about, if it's a sexual act, there's constant dialogue, are you okay with this? And does this help the story? Does this help you? How does your partner feel about you doing this? And there was, I mean, I got lucky with this one because there was years of history,
Yeah.
but I you know, we kind of had to approach it with Claire as if we never met each other.
Like it was really, yeah. It was
humbling.
Yeah, it was really humbling. It was really interesting because like, yeah, there were sort of protocols that I felt like James and I have a shorthand, we can skip that. But like, no, like actually let's talk about like, what is the process of building intimacy for a play? And I felt like we had a lot of autonomy in the room. Like I felt like if she made a suggestion and we were like, I'm not comfortable with that, there was always something else to be found. But the thing I also really appreciated about Claire was that, yes, it was about choreography. It was about where does the hand go, when does it move, all of that, how to make sure that we are safe. But I think she also had an eye toward, and I appreciate this about her, that this is ultimately in service of us feeling powerful and sexy. Do you know what I mean? Like ultimately, that's what we're wanting to put up. And so like she gave us all of this room and choreography in order for us to like fly with it, you know? So I really appreciated that after all sort of like the technical aspects of it, she was also like, and now you're free to fill it, you know, which I loved.
That ownership is really key.
Yeah.
And when you do it 8 times a week and you do it for that long of run, the ownership and walking into that space in your own body and feeling that ownership was so important and part of how you process the play, how you survive the play. It was the first time, and you know, in the couple roles that I've done within New York, I've done plays with a lot of sexual content.
Yeah.
I've been nude on Broadway before. I've downtown I was doing lots of sexual acts in Terrence McNally's new play, and this was the first time that I felt like all fear was released, and that I could actually really finally do my job, and that was what she did for me.
Because I think, James, you told me before, she gave you like a safe word. You could say no. I think you told me this before, that when you were working and discussing stuff, she said you can always say no.
Oh,
Yeah, and one of the first days of rehearsal,
Yeah.
the mantra that went up on the
Yeah.
rehearsal board was "No is a complete sentence."
Yeah, I think that's what, yeah.
You know, so
Which I think is also freeing at the same time when you're put into a situation to work on a scene or something, and you know you have that. It actually frees you up in a way too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't you wish every show that has intimate scenes has an intimacy director? Like you said, you did 6 Degrees of Separation. You've done a lot of different things where you didn't have intimacy directors. And I
it's a
think
necessity at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
forward in the theater industry,
Yeah.
it's a must be.
Yeah.
It has to happen. It's a requirement.
What I love is Tom Curdy, who was married to Terrence McNally, who wrote all those plays. He was the first producer to bring Claire in to do Frankie and Johnny with Audra and Michael. So I thought it was really great that she was brought. But I love it. She also does fight also, because there's a lot of like physical stuff to this show too. What kind of conversations did Claire have with Robert and Jeremy in the room? Were they involved with when she was directing a certain scene, or she took over those
I
scenes?
think she had a lot of leeway,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that she was brought there for a specific reason, and Jeremy and Robert were very respectful of that, and they honored her and as an artist and let her do her work. And then, we'd show it, and Robert would come back with like, our particular like intimacy moments were like also involved with like, there was fight involved, there was some choreography, like dance actually involved. And so we would like run it, and then Robert would be like, I feel like we need more sex here, more fight here, more dance, like he would edit in that way. But yeah, she was just allowed.
And then you three would go back to work.
Yeah.
We would take Claire, you'd go and work.
Yeah.
It's also about choosing when we were choreographing the fight and the sexual acts. It was also marking within our physical containers and our bodies about what we could do 8 shows a week. How could we? I mean, the amount of different choreographies that our fight sequence went through, even in first preview week.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And then we shifted, and
There was
we
a lift, and I just get it. Yeah.
So, but there was that open dialogue and support behind us to say, okay, well, what can you do 8 shows a week?
Yeah.
We want the best performance. Yeah.
See, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people have issues with, I think when people choreograph a show now, it's like they're choreographing for a one-time only, like for a music video. It's like, you have to choreograph a show where people can actually do this 8 times a week for an entire run without injury. So I think it's really nice that you said after that first performance, you were like, we have to alter this lift or take this out because this will never work 8 times a week. Where another choreographer might have said, no, we're keeping this in, and you have to learn to work around this.
Yeah, we were well taken care of in that way. Yeah.
You were talking about, your relationship. The relationship of Dustin and Gary have so many obstacles in this play, and you were talking about knowing each other so well. I'm sure knowing each other the way you do made it so much easier to take this emotional and physical journey 8 times a week.
It really, there was a trust. Not only did we know each other, there was an actual deep friendship, So there was a safety.
Yeah.
Also. And also, we had to go to some really dark and vicious places, and I think there was no holding back, because I was like, no, I know that this actor knows how to take that, and he also knows how to give me what I need, There was a trust. I felt like I could go further because of our relationship. Yeah.
Everything that was crafted on stage was because of the container of trust that was there, which was it was limitless. And like Ato just said, the sort of the viciousness that we had to throw back at each other, and the place that we leave each other at the end of the second act, some nights were more difficult than others. It really was hard. It was. even though I recognize that I'm in a play, when you're looking at one of your best friends in the eye and you're having that breakup every evening, the body knows, the nervous system knows no different. The body doesn't know any difference. If you're going through that every night, the body goes through that. Your nervous system takes a hold of that. But because it was Atu, because it was us, you know, we hugged at the end of every night. That we had to tap out. And, you know, was it a complete tap out? No, of course we had to go into our own independent lives and have our own sort of letting go. But there had to be the reminder of, this is a play, this is a story, this is a relationship that is not ours. But in the ways in which that we were going full force, sometimes the psyche, the body didn't know the difference. And that's, you know, the truth that is required of this play, as we were talking about before, and that Jeremy's writing, the emotional truth that exists within these characters and all the relationships, sort of the pain that goes through and how you go through that as an artist. Now I'm not scared about the next project that has any sort of tension or trauma within it, you know, because that space has actually been carved out in my instrument and in my heart. Maybe I'll get Ato as my scene partner again. That would be great. That would be really good.
Oh my God.
You know, because you just started talking about this, you all went on such a raw emotional ride with this play. What was your pre-show like for each of you? Like, what did you do to prep yourself? Like, I'm going to the theater now, I've got to get through this.
It varied, but mostly it had to do with music. I needed to put on some kind of something to get me in the right headspace. I also needed to do something physical. So I would like either stretch or do some kind of like short workout or something. And then I would sort of just like take 3 breaths and then go on down and do Act 1, which is wild. Yeah.
Did the music vary of what you listened to?
Yeah, it did vary, but there was a lot of Beyonce, I know that. I know that for a fact.
I heard it through the wall.
Did you each get your own dressing room?
Yes.
We did, yeah.
That's great at the Golden.
Yes.
Okay. What was your, no, I love that. What was your pre-show like?
It varied day to day,
Okay.
but it was always a matter of pre-show of, in the day before is preservation of energy.
Okay.
And so it was not a lot until I went to the gym or yoga and opened up the body that way. And there was always a warm-up. I tended to get to the theater really early. I kind of need to spend time with the spirits, spend time in the audience, spend time on stage when no one's there, and just sit and kind of feel the space. Yeah, once I started, I have to be, you know, I would warm up my voice, I would get into costume, but I also have to be really sweaty at the beginning of on my entrance. And something about that ritual of applying the oil and the sweat, it sort of was the putting on the mask of sorts. It got me into it every night. And once I felt soaking wet, and it was pretty cold backstage, then I was sort of tapped in. Yeah. But I would go down really early, and I would, the play, the mirrors, they have cracks in them. And so I'd have this ritual. I would go down before every show. It's kind of creepy if you're an audience member now and you saw the play, but I was standing there in the cracks and just sort of see who's in the first 5 rows, who's in the back 5 rows, and just kind of get a feel of the night. Not that it would inform me or my performance or what I needed to do, but something about knowing and spending time with everyone before I had to spend a lot of time. Yeah, that was a ritual of mine.
On the opposite end, I did not want to know.
Right.
I was like, I don't see y'all. Like, you know. That was what was useful for me. Interesting. Yeah.
No, so you like to get there early. Did you like to get there early too? What time would you arrive?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so you were like, okay.
I'm gonna get there probably 15 minutes before half hour,
Okay.
or right at half hour, you know, or maybe sometimes a little later. Yeah, I think I just felt like once I entered that space, there was like so much like energy and sort of like like emotional like work that needed to be done, that I was like, all right, I need to like be efficient about my time here. Like I'm gonna go in, get it done, get out. That's just what I needed. And I think that the day before and the time after, to sort of recoup, I just really, really needed to maximize that as well. Yeah.
Because over the years, I've spoken to actors, and some are like, I like to get there 2 hours early. Some say, I like to get in there right at that moment, put the wig on and go on. I don't want to or 5 minutes before. Like John Rubinstein said when he did Pippin, he would arrive at like 5 minutes of, shows went up at 7:30 then. Like 7:25, get in, put the wig on, put the tights on, and get out there. And Stockard, it was the same thing in her last show. Just put the wig on. I mean, but that's how they like to do it. Would you run lines a lot? Like, it's such a heavy piece. Like during the run, did you ever run lines?
No. During the rehearsal process downtown, when other scenes were being rehearsed, because the act one, it's like 3 two-person scenes.
Yeah.
When one couple was rehearsing, Robert would send us into the other room and to like run stuff, with understudies or with a stage management or anything like that. So like we drilled those lines downtown. There was like, I'm pretty sure I know all the lines to that play right now. Yeah. Other people's lines.
Yeah. For sure. Sometimes I'd be sitting there and it's difficult when you're sitting in the middle of Act 2 and it's the big therapy scene and everyone's sitting there. I knew the play so much that I was just in every motion, and then suddenly I'd be listening so hard that my face would be sort of following along with their action, which is not what I should have been doing. But I was so tapped into that I think we could probably do the whole play.
You could do a 2-person version of Slave Play right now.
That would be good. Okay. No, you were such a tight company, all of you, and like I said, it's such an emotional ride. Was there a go-to dressing room beforehand? Because when I spoke to the company before, some of the actors would say we'd like to keep it light before we went on, because they knew the heavy journey we were going on. So.
Yeah, I mean, the question was there like a go-to dressing room? I would say I spent a lot of time with Shalia and Irene in their dressing room. They were just like right below me, and there was such warm energy in there, so that also like set off some of that like tension for me.
Yeah.
I would always check on Annie.
Yeah.
Because she would make me laugh. She's also standing there getting in her wig, and she'd make some old theater joke about I don't know. I can't even anybody. And
well, that's what you said. You want to live with the spirits.
Yeah, I wanted to live with the spirits, but
totally.
she'd say a joke. She'd keep it light, and I would say hi,
and when we would have like a little dance party or something, it would normally be in the staircases. We wouldn't like really stay in anyone's room. Like there was a lot of twerking on banisters,
So how did you stay emotionally and physically fit during the run? Because like you said, your body feels this stuff, but your body thinks it's real trauma. You can let it go mentally as an actor, but I'm sure if you're going through this physical stuff every night, your body doesn't know that. So, I mean, how did you had a big run downtown and you had a big run on Broadway and you were doing this 8 times a week. How did you stay emotionally and physically fit?
I went to the gym a lot. I lifted a lot at that point. Since have like taken some time off from that, just because it's like it was a container for aggression for me. Yeah. I think that there was something that came up in the play that I'm not a particularly aggressive person. I think anger is not something that like I'm very interested in often just like putting out into the world, but this character did. And so the fact that I had to touch that meant I wanted to also process that by putting it somewhere. And for me, it was going to the gym. It just felt like a really like aggressive act. And that's kind of how I stayed physically ready for this play. Emotionally, I went to therapy and meditated a lot. Like that was also helpful for me. Yeah.
James, for you?
Yeah, kind of all the same things. Therapy, gym. I have a lot of I think it comes from childhood. There's a lot of tension built up in my body, and so a lot of it was finding methods and modalities in which to soothe the nervous system, whether that be yoga or meditation, or we also had a wonderful massage therapist, physical therapist, that she truly was also quite a healer. It wasn't just working out knots in the body, but it was an emotional practice as well. And for me, over the course of the play, but also, since I started working, is that for me, having a sense of spirituality, and always remaining connected to the higher purpose of it all, and my higher power as an artist, as a storyteller, as an actor, that would really ground me and give me strength. That's how I really got through it. Yeah.
The audience at Slave Play sizzled and crackled from the second you walked into the theater. You saw the MacGregor Plantation, you heard all this noise, you saw the mirrors, you saw all this stuff. It must have been really great for you as actors, listening as the play would unravel, to sort of see whose side the audience was on. What was that like?
You could tell, you could make some assumptions maybe about the demographic of the audience based on what was being responded to and how it was being responded to. And I had to sort of like build an immunity to like, do they like me? Are they rooting for me? Are they rooting for Dustin? I had to like put that out of my head. But it was really pleasurable for me to like follow how each audience kind of like shifted the play. It just kept it really fresh and alive for me. Yeah,
I mean, that immunity that Atu said, it's also, it was tricky sometimes because, Robert, he would often say, cut the bits. That was a frequent note. He talked about the bits, and obviously there's a lot of comedy and humor within the play and how it exists. And sometimes I got really self-conscious because, I even asked. It was like first preview week, and I was checking in with him, and I was like, okay, am I taking up too much? Am I taking up too much time in this laugh? And he was like, you are playing the actor. You need to take the time, because the actor himself is enjoying it. But within that, sometimes as a performer, I got self-conscious about the execution of the comedy and the humor, because I still had to move forward to the next moment. I still had to move, despite if the audience laughed or not, that there was, what is the story of this scene, and am I moving the story forward? And sometimes that period of laughter or discomfort lasted longer than others. So it was a 1 foot in and 1 foot out constantly, that you have to keep the motor running. So hearing that energy exchange there was no audience that was ever the same, ever, within one day of the week. Typically some plays or some shows or musicals, you can say, okay, well, this is a Friday night crowd, this is a Wednesday matinee. That was never the case with this play.
Sometimes on a Tuesday night, it was the most raucous thing that you had ever. You
And
just
Saturday
never knew what
night
you were
was
going to
crickets.
get. Yeah, never knew.
You can never assume. And what a gift as a performer, because the last thing I want is to be in some sort of,
Like,
I don't know,
like machine
assumption that I'm going to get the laughs here, and I want to be kept to my toes, and that was a gift of this audience.
And I also think it's a testament to like to what was being confronted in this play. I think that audiences weren't predictable because this wasn't predictable, and they were being challenged, actually. And so the response felt a lot more visceral and sort of like you never knew what you were gonna get, because it came from like a deep place,
Well, I want to talk about the impact of the 2 Blackout performances and what those meant to you. Explain to the audience what the Blackout performances were at Slave Play.
The Blackout performances were the producers bought out the theater, and essentially only artists, people who identify as people of color, specifically Black or brown, could come to see the performance, and that was the entire audience. And when you think about Broadway generally, it's not a space where you find a lot of black and brown people. You tend to find a lot more white people of a certain age as well. And those performances were really, really special. I think that this play is speaking to black people and asking white people to listen. To that conversation that is being had. And, you know, I've done some film and TV, but I'm mostly like a stage person thus far. And the experience of being an actor of color and really feeling that a full audience understands every single thing that I am doing, it's rare. It's like, for me, thus far, it's a once in a lifetime. So that was really, really, really special for me. Yeah.
James, for you.
Well, to witness that for my black friends within the cast, and for that recognition and that constant dialogue that happened within the play and Jeremy's words and the revelations and experiences that these black characters were having within the play was an honor and a privilege to watch that flow of dialogue. You know, constantly there's within theater and within plays, you want that conversation that flows, that it feels like the fourth wall is broken. And on those nights, the fourth wall was broken. It was shattered in this gorgeous, beautiful way that they were every much a character in this play as everyone else was. It was a dialogue. It was a back and forth dialogue that I'll never forget.
You know, black folks in the theater, like, we're talking back to the show. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially if you're like, oh, we have permission to talk back. We're talking back to the show. You know what I mean? Like, and I also really appreciated like the sort of like the dance that had to sort of be danced while we were sort of like, oh, that hit you, and you felt the need to sort of like give us a little something. So it's like, how do we keep going with the show that we know and also incorporate you? Come along with us, you know? There was something really exciting about that.
Yeah. You know, the two of you are working at the top of your game, but I want to go back to the beginning. Like, growing up, how did you fall in love with theater, and what were your earliest creative outlets?
My mom was a single mom, and I was raised by my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, and my grandparents, they would put on old Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals, and I would. Shut up! You knew this.
Have we talked about this?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
They would put on VHS, and I would watch it. And my mom, one of her businesses, she owned a candy shop across the street from the Civic Theater of Allentown. And I watched these kids coming out of this theater with such joy on their face. And they felt like me, they looked like me, they just had these sort of creative personalities. And I never forget telling my mom, like, that's where I want to be. And so I grew up in that theater from the age of 6 on up. And I grew up in the backstage in the rehearsal hall, surrounded by these older actors, and that was it. That was it. There was never any other decision or choice. It was that. I memorized Yul Brynner's dance in The King and I, the whole thing. Puzzlement. Is it puzzlement?
It's a puzzlement.
It's a puzzlement. And that was the first thing I memorized, and I knew it. I knew every word of that musical by heart, and that was it. Yeah.
It's a big number too.
It's a big number.
It's a big number to learn.
Yeah.
You still know it?
We'll see.
I want to show.
Okay.
Similarly, my mom loves like Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, old movie musicals, and we would go to the library once a week, and we would all pick some books, and then she would get out old Rodgers and Hammerstein movie musicals, and we would all sit on her bed and watch them. And then like as the years went on, like I am one of 5 kids, and like my siblings kind of like peeled away, and by the end of it I was just like the only one there, like Rochester Hammerstein, you know? And so it was my mom who like fueled that in me and saw that in me. I was a really, really desperately shy kid, and I still carry some of that. But when I'm on a stage, it's over. Like that's it. Like that's where I need to be, you know. And I felt that at a very young age. I felt like I belonged, you know, there. So I had a hard time relating to people outside of that, but in that space, I was really, really alive. Yeah.
You two would have been best friends growing up, you know that.
Certainly.
Roz at Hammerstein.
Well, the first time, yeah, truly. Well, the first time, before we even met, we had a mutual friend who both said to each other before we met in person, you're going to school, you're going to Yale with Atu, or you're going to Yale with James. You guys are going to be the best of friends.
I was told at a birthday party, you're going to meet this dude, James, and he's going to be your best friend.
It was weird.
And then it happened.
There's something karmic in our
Yeah.
relationship, like past lifetime. And
Yeah.
it's so strange.
And then you get to do slave play together, right?
Yeah.
Like lovers.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to ask you that defining moment when you said, I have to be an actor and try to make a living at this. Was it the Civic Center for you? Was it?
I think it was later for me. When I went to a performing arts high school in Pennsylvania, and when I graduated, I thought, I don't want to go to college, I just want to go to a conservatory. So I went to this conservatory in New York, and I went there for a year, and they kicked me out. They didn't invite me back for second year.
Really?
Yeah, and I was a dancer as a kid, and so I had some, as they called, damage in my body of that. I couldn't walk into a space without being seen as a dancer. But they basically said in their review that they didn't see a future for me as an actor. And so I transferred I went to undergrad at Marymount Manhattan College. I wanted to stay in the city. I wanted to learn about other things. I wanted to study a strong liberal arts curriculum. But the defining moment was within undergrad, where I went to Williamstown Theater Festival. And I was there as an apprentice my first year, and then I assisted Nikki Martin the next year. And it was there that I saw not only these grad school actors from these top schools, from Yale, Juilliard, et cetera, but these working professionals, these greats, these titans of screen and stage. And they were all here in this small town in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And I saw the breadth of their career that went from stage to screen. And I saw the integrity and love that they had in their eyes for their coworkers, for the young actors that were at this festival, which was, one of them was me. And so that's where I knew. I said, okay, well, that's it. This is over. I'm pursuing this for the rest of my life. It was their inspiration and their legacy.
That's amazing.
I went to a performing arts high school.
You also knew that I did too.
Yeah, I know, I did. I did too. I don't know if you knew.
Do you forget about me?
I know everything about you.
Okay.
And I think it was there where the idea that I could make a living doing this was planted. I had started doing shows when I was 8, and I had done a musical or something like that every year since. And then when I was 14, I had the choice. In Maryland, there was a consortium of schools, and you could pick which high school you wanted to go to. Each high school was centered on different things: arts and humanities, maths and sciences, and international baccalaureate was the other school. And I was like, there's only one place I can't go. I have to go to the art school. And I did, but all of my friends went to another school. So that first year I was like miserable. I was like, I have no friends, you know, but I was getting to do the thing that I loved. And then one of my friends at that school was part of a community theater ensemble, and they were having auditions, and we had done, I think, Grease was the musical that year. And she was like, come audition for this other thing. And I went and I did, and I was surrounded by other kids who were deeply interested in the theater, and this was through high school, and then as we were leaving, as we were finishing high school, most of the seniors were auditioning for conservatory programs, and I don't know that I would have pursued acting in college if I had not had that experience with this community theater. And they made me believe that, like, you can make a life doing this. Yeah.
Beautiful. We have a few questions from the audience. This is from Lindsay. Why this story and why now? Do you think it has more relevance to be on Broadway in 2020 instead of, say, 2013 or 2014 at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement? What changes have been made to this story that must be told now?
Well, I think we're in a place where how we have conversations is really being looked at. Like, where, for better or for worse, we're now really engaged with, like, the language we use with each other and how that matters, And I think that this play is about conversations. It's about how do we talk and listen to each other. And I think it's especially poignant because of the lack of ability to have conversations right now. This, like, idea that, like, I'm on my soapbox, I'm here in my stance, and you need to hear me. I think things like the internet and social media have, like, amplified this idea that, like, you have a platform and therefore, like, you're right and you're the only right one. And I think that just leads us to more conflict and tension. And I think that this play is trying to say, like, are we able to listen to each other with compassion, even in the midst of conflict? And, like, that is a question I do have for this country right now. Like, is that something we can do? And I think that that's why this play is necessary now. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And also the message of, especially for the white audience members that come and see this play, why now, in terms of within our society, that you can claim, if you just simply say, oh, I'm not racist, or I've never been a racist in myself, and you remain neutral, you are therefore on the side of the oppressor. And if you're not fighting actively for the communities around you and the communities that have less privilege than you do, that the mirror and that examining of where have I been guilty, or where have I been responsible, or where I have been perhaps not defending those around me and standing up for them. I think there's this sort of disease in our society that is sort of a passive activist, where you say, I'm against this and I'm against that. But if you're not actively speaking out and using your voice and getting out and especially your vote, you're not helping. You're not helping those around you. You're part of the problem. So that examination, that forced examination of that mirror, of that 2-hour traffic, to witness microaggressions that some of the white people in the audience may have never really realized that they were doing. Sure. People walk away really deeply affected, like that. And it's also, like Ato said, about listening, but also about space that people take up when they're taking up someone else's space. It's really important to examine, especially now, today.
Beautifully put. So, question from Alva. Does the title Slave Play refer to more than the period in American history? And did the use of twerking music at the beginning, was it meant to cause the audience to begin questioning everything that was happening in this play?
Yeah. You should feel like, where am I?
Yeah.
Actually, like, what am I seeing right now? Which, like, at least I do sometimes, like, one must have that experience when you think about chattel slavery. It's like, what? It's insane. I can't, to this day, right? Like, we know what happened. It's still just like, you thought that was the way, And I feel like the play does that as well. It's like, you have to be sort of disarmed. And I think that that Rihanna was that initial moment of, like, wait, where am I actually, which I love about this play.
And also Jeremy's examination of his own psyche in his own way of wrestling the history of this nation. And so that if this song took you out of it, that this is an example of a way into Jeremy's imagination of how he himself as a writer, but also as a Black queer American, is processing his relationship to race and himself, but those around him. So it's sort of, there's that sound effect that sort of whooshes you into the world and into Kanisha's psyche and into her musical obsessive disorder, or as the therapists call it, but into her own imagination of this song, that it also sort of sends you into his own imagination. So it's good. You're going on his ride, you're not in control.
One of my favorite things that Jeremy says about this play is that he wanted to write a play that people in 2020 could not walk away from. Wanted to write a play about slavery that people could not walk away from. I think that there can be a tendency to sort of like, that was then it. And I think things like having Rihanna show up in your work show up in your play really reminds people that no, this is about us today.
Love it. Any talk about a feature film?
I haven't heard anything. Do y'all know about it?
No idea.
Make a great feature film with you two. And it's all you.
Although I have heard Jeremy say, it's in the title, this is a theatrical piece. Right. It's a play, And Jeremy is which I love. I don't know if you saw the article, was that yesterday? About his HBO overall deal. And
2-year deal,
yeah, and even HBO. In that, right, he's producing stuff for HBO, but also they've given him money to produce theater. He is about keeping the theater fresh and alive and pushing it forward, which I so appreciate,
And he's also not about people stealing he's also not about people stealing his masterpiece of a play and using it for someone else's profit in a bigger sphere. Yeah. He's not about to have that happen. It's why he made himself an executive producer on the Broadway show. He's like, no, I'm going to be a part of this because this came from me. I'm taking ownership over this. You can't take this away from me. And so I think if slave play is ever mentioned in a television or film space, Jeremy, he's got ownership over that, as he should.
If he does, it could be called Slave Movie. With you all in it? Slave film. Maybe. Slave film. A question from Regina. What other production on stage or film would you compare slave play to? There really isn't anything, is there? Music Man? The music.
Well.
I'm trying to think of something.
I don't think I can.
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back to something like Booty Candy,
Yeah, totally.
or something like Barbecue again, just because I think there's something deeply pleasurable about thinking you're seeing one thing and then realizing you're seeing something else entirely. But I really can't think of anything that. I guess maybe something like Sarah Kane's Blasted, which is just deeply confrontational and it gives its audience this I don't know. I mean, reading it and seeing the bits I have seen of it, you just get this sense of human viciousness, which I think also exists in this play. Yeah.
What was the most rewarding experience you had while working on slave play? I'm sure there are many.
Yeah. I mean, what? Yeah, sure.
No, for me, it was downtown. There was a much older woman, and she had to have been anywhere from, I don't know, 75 to 90 years old, and she was sitting in the front row, and during my monologue in Act 2, I go, I say that line, nobody but my mama ever told me I was a prize. Yeah. And I would take some time just because the emotion at that point was pretty heavy for me. And then in that space, she said something. She said, "Let him speak." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I will." And then she said, and then I took some time, and she said, "Take your time, baby." And what was really special about that experience for me was that, like, I'm like, this is a Black elder sitting here, and Lord knows what she has seen in this country, what she has dealt with in this country. And something I am doing up on this stage has, like, moved something in her that she feels she needs to speak, needs to connect. I will carry that experience for the rest of my life. Yeah.
I don't think I can name a specific experience, but I'm constantly wrestling with, as an entertainer, as a performer, as an artist, in times like these, how can I actually be an agent of change? And how can I be more active politically? How can I help my neighbor? How can I help those around me? And, I forget where I read it, but every person on this earth has a specific purpose. They're assigned to a specific cell of an organism, of their purpose in this world and what they do and their job. And just the noise and the conversation and the space that this play took up, and the fact that my voice was a part of it and my performance was a part of it, that I could make these conversations happen, these revelations happen, these conversations that spread out into the street. I could walk away from it with a profound sense of purpose, and knowing that I went to work today and I clocked in, and my role as an artist or storyteller, as an actor, is to enlighten and help those think about things that they never thought about before, help them see themselves, help them process things that they haven't ever had the ability to process. So being a part of that, the whole thing that this play did, and the noise that it created. This play was such the little engine that could. Oh yeah. It wasn't an easy job to get this done on Broadway or even downtown.
And when they told us we were going, I mean, most of us were like, "Really?
Really?" Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So
this play?
To go from that point to now, that I was a small part of that. I mean, I can go to bed at night knowing that I made some small difference.
Beautiful. Yeah. These are some questions from a director. What happened when Understudies went on? What were those performances like?
We have amazing understudies, but it was interesting. It really shifted the dynamic,
They were all so prepared and
deeply
professional and killed it.
And amazing. And one of our understudies, Jakeem, actually originated the role of Gary up at Yale. And so there was like, I don't know, it felt like all in the family in that way.
Yeah.
But I remember in rehearsals pretty early on, since we'd already done the show downtown, when we would do runs in rehearsals for the Broadway run, Robert would like rotate people in and out, just so the understudies all had like a sense of running the show with us. And that was really exciting. But it also just revealed some like this play is very specific about the racial makeup of these people. And like when Jakeem, who looks like me, went on for Philip, who is meant to be half Black, half white, and living with what that means, because that's a certain type of experience in this country. It just, when he said when he said a line like,
"I'm not Black, I'm not white.
I'm not Black, I'm not white," it would do this thing to the play where we were all like, "You're not? Because you look Black." You know? But it heightened the fact that this play at its core to me is science fiction. Like that's what the play is. And so when something kind of like off happened in that way, it just like amplified that this play is living in kind of like a tilted space, you know, an off space, you know.
Did either of you miss and have to play with somebody else?
We never
Never.
missed a show.
Fabulous. Wow.
Not a single show.
There were days. There was
Let's hear it. That's 8 shows a week.
There were some moments.
There were, yeah.
And we had a pact.
Oh, we got sick
We
toward
got
the end.
really sick. We both.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We both had the flu at the same time. But we were like, well, if we're kissing each other, then
both have it already.
We both have it.
Yeah.
We can't miss a show.
Can't, yeah.
Um,
And we did have a pact that was like, if you are going to call out,
You have to
I am
call
the
me.
first
Yeah.
person you call.
Because that's part of the next question. What about the sanitary health issues with all like the spit and bootlicking, that you two that you two go through in the play?
You want to talk about that bootlicking, James?
I do. Yes. So if you saw the play, I get really on top of a boot and I lick it and I spit on it and I rub my face all over it. I made sure and used my voice a lot to make sure that this boot was very clean and that there was no chemicals placed on it, no shoe polish. In the end, we had a system in place that God bless our dressers who did that every night and helped me and helped all of us with different parts that different people licked. But in the end, there was a very a sanitary system of a clean boot and also the bandage, the Tagaderm bandages that were placed on top. But yeah, there was.
And that's stuff that, that came directly from Claire. She was very involved in how we were hygienic about what we were doing, just another layer of comfort that she was providing.
Yeah. And I always said, Atu, please tell me if my breath is bad. Just let me know.
Yeah.
And it never was it?
No.
Good.
It wasn't.
Okay. Right?
No. I did tell you that one time.
What time?
You had eaten onions or something. I was like,
That is not true. This one's eating like dig in a half hour.
Maybe it was after the show.
Probably after I step off stage.
I mean, I don't remember kissing you and being like,
That's
so
good.
it must have been after.
Okay.
You two have to work together again. You know that.
Yes.
I love you.
I love you.
Well, listen, what is the best? We have so many actors in the room tonight, and we're watching this around the world. What's the best bit of advice that you've been given that you live by, either personally or professionally?
There are two. Okay, I'm thinking of two. Stephen McKinley Henderson said to me, "You don't have." In his class, he was like, "You don't need to get it right. You need to get it true." Which I think is just like, it frees you. Like, what is it? How is it real for you? Like, what is the truth of this moment for you? And I think another thing that is important to note is like, ultimately people are coming for a connection to like something that feels authentic, right? And authenticity is really about like not trying to be anybody else but who you are, And I think that's something I keep growing into as an actor, is like, I'm only gonna sort of follow my artistic bliss, and then like beyond that, what works for other people might not necessarily work for me. So to really know like, what is it I'm after, what is it that turns me on artistically, and just really actively pursue that thing, I think is something that I feel like will sustain me as an actor for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Beautifully put. For you, James.
For me, I think something a teacher said to me up at school was that to have full faith in the statement that there will never be another you, and that there's no one else like you. This business can be incredibly competitive. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of traps within it. But you just got to run the race and believe in yourself. And the second that you look back at the other person behind you in the race, you've lost. You're taking a look at that other person that has nothing to do with you, that is gorgeous and beautiful in their own sphere, in their own artistry. And what you have to bring to the world and what they have to bring to the world are two separate things entirely. And to have just trust and faith in that. And, the biggest thing for me is that I've come across a lot of no's in my life, and it's a matter of what you do with the no, what you do with that piece of rejection. Do you take the no? Do you absorb it and make it about you and make it about your failure, or do you take the no and move on to the next table? Andre DeShield said it in his Tony speech. You fill your life with people whose eyes light up when they see you.
Yeah.
Go to those people. Go where it's warm. Go where the light is. That's it.
This has been beautiful. You know, Slave Play is one of the most groundbreaking plays, period, of any century, of anything, what Jeremy has written. And you two were such a part of that, just in your performances and just the actors that you are. This has been so great tonight, just sitting with the two of you. This has been a master class for everybody sitting here and watching. You've been so honest about so many things. And I thank you so much for sharing your stories and your journey with Slave Play.
Thank you.
Let's hear it for
Thanks for
them.
having me.